Domtar, for example, you do not have reserved parking spaces.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't do that stuff. I hate that stuff with passion. So I think that's one of our key pieces of culture.
Okay.
And probably the key for me. Accountability is important, of course, because you know we're not registered charity. I think sometimes we perhaps veer too much to the side of understanding sometimes the Domtar. So you know we have to kind of steer between that accountability, performance culture, and behaving respectfully to people. Sometimes those are complicated. But even if we fire people, we fire them respectfully, and we never, ever, 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 ever try and shave what we owe them or play a game with them. And if you know companies do that, I think they deserve all the toxicity they get.
Yeah.
Because I just hate the way people behave.
Yeah.
So I think that's most of it. And we have a set of values that we're very clear about respect. We're very clear. Really, we call it caring, and that's not we all sing Kumbaya every morning, but we're respectful to each other.
Okay.
And we make certain that meetings that we treat people as we'd like to be treated.
Okay, excellent, thank you, thank you. Let me ask about the commitment to the Charlotte area, the greater Charlotte area. So how committed is Domtar and you to the Charlotte community?
Well, I mean, we brought in, so I moved down here from Montreal, so I made that commitment myself. So, you know, we are now formally based in Fort Mill, whereas previously we were formally based in Montreal. So, I mean, I think that's a big difference.
Yep.
So we've got, within the Carolinas, we have, you know, a huge mill up in Plymouth in North Carolina, a big pulp mill.
Yep.
We have in Greenville, North Carolina is a large facility for adult incontinence products. Our personal care business is headquartered in Raleigh. So, yeah, we're very good. I mean, I worked out, I think, probably, I don't know, $1.5 billion or so invested, I think, in the Carolinas.
Wow, okay.
So, fair bit.
Yep. So I've got one more question, and then I'm going to open it up for some audience questions. We're going to have some time for that. So please be thinking about a question that you might want to ask John. But let me ask you about work-life balance. How do you sustain yourself? Do you, you know, Peter Browning always says it's 24/7. You know, it's
complete rubbish. It's just the way he did it. I mean, you want to do it well. So whatever time commitment, it's about doing it well. So whatever that means to you, that's what it means.
Okay.
If you have a great team of people, we have a very stable management team. So when I first came, we made some changes, but we've only made really one change in 10 years. So the lady who was our VP of HR got promoted and is now the VP of HR at Duke Energy. So she got a massive job, so all credit to her for doing that. So, you know, we all know our roles. We all know my weaknesses and my strengths. So they cover my weaknesses and they allow me to kind of do what I can do in terms of my strengths. Personally, I play a bit of golf rather badly. I'm an avid reader, so I love political biographies. So if you hadn't read Robert Caro or Lyndon Johnson, it's the best out there. 4 volumes. You won't like Lyndon Johnson by the time you're done, but it's a fantastic biography. I'm a Churchill obsessive, so I've read, I mean, God knows how many books I've read. Andrew Roberts was here recently. He's just written the latest biography, so I helped him do some stuff.
Oh, wow.
So my wife has, I have to say we have 8 dogs.
8? Oh, okay.
So it's complete chaos.
What's their weight?
All the colors and all the sizes. It's 6 rescues, 2 very rare breeds.
Wow.
Everything from a 130-pound dog to my dog, who's 15 pounds. And in fact, it's the other way around. It's not really, he's my dog, I'm his human. So he's just decided. And he has this habit of, he just sits 10 feet away and just yelps until I pick him up. He will not come to me. So I think, you know, of course, if you enjoy what you do, you're not really sitting there. I don't travel as much as I used to, so I do my best actually to come home, to get home at night, so I'll come home very late rather than stay away if possible.
Okay.
So, but you know, I'm 65, so I'm sort of bring off Bali at some point. But yeah, when I was younger, I was out there non-stop doing my stuff. Was I doing a better job then than I do now? Probably not.
Okay.
I think you can mistake activity for achievement, actually.
Yeah.
So I'd rather, you tell you what they've done, but they won't tell you what they've achieved. I think it's very, so when you end up in that company, well, I worked really hard. So, what have you actually achieved?
Yeah, yeah.
So I would always say to people, think about what you've achieved, not how hard you've worked.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It does. Hey, I've got a rescue myself. I've got an Alaska Malamute.
Oh, right.
That's 90.
Well, we have this, she's a shepherd Pyrenean.
Yeah.
She barks at it all the time. And so far, she's cornered the gardener and the poor man who comes. I mean, obviously, we're a key account for any pooper scooping. So, in fact, I had competitive bidding. I had Poop 911, the pooper scooper, and the scooper dude all came to bid on my business. I felt so proud. And he was there defending himself with this bag of poop from my large dog. It's a little colourful.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's open it up for some audience questions. Yes, sir.
Hi.
You mentioned culture earlier.
Yes.
What would be your recommendations when it comes to build a culture where learning is safe, first? Second, where people feel safe to disagree. Let's say you have there are people that disagree with the decision. How important for you and what recommend you have around that subject?
Well, that's a great question. So let me say, I think disagreeing with a decision is a problem. So if we've made a decision and you've had your input, I think you have to implement that decision. So we kind of have a cabinet government rule that is, so if we've sat in a meeting and we've had a blazing row, and my team's a pretty diverse team, so we actually do have blazing rows. But at the end of it, if we've made a choice, if you second guess that choice out of the meeting, that's behavior that is not rewarded. Shall we leave it at that? So that would, and so we've been together 10 years, so on the whole, we've kept that rule. I think you can do a couple of things. I think one is you can be very explicit that you're entering a part of the discussion that is going to be uncomfortable. So there's a technique that I found a few years ago actually, which was if you're the leader of the meeting and you just say, we're going to enter the zone of uncomfortable discussion. None of us are going to enjoy this, and we're all going to disagree violently. So if you're explicit, I think actually you do better. Obviously, the other thing to do is check with people that they're not plotting revenge, while you're sitting in the meeting, supposedly coming to a decision. So I think you have to be pretty open and honest about that. And I mean, I'm not afraid of healthy disagreement. In fact, people who work for us know, I have a CFO who is French-Canadian, who probably has not liked a single idea I've had in 11 years. Right? And he's referred to internally as Dr. No. And yet, he has incredible emotional intelligence. So I remember once when I was standing up kind of doing the thing, in front of a couple hundred people, I get this text message that I know, you are the right leader for this company. Yours don't. It was fantastically powerful because it was so not who you would expect him to be. So I think you have to work out people's, who they are and what, and after a while you know who's going to be where in an argument, and of course you can play with that too and enjoy that, I think. Does that answer your question? On the learning point, I think that's a leadership question. So if you're prepared, if you're the leader and you're prepared to learn, and you make that obvious, and you say, I don't know, leaders don't like to say that. I think you let people, people can then be comfortable and feel free to learn. So I think you've got to do, I think that, again, bosses are such weird things, aren't they? They're just weird. I had a Swedish boss, and I mean, you've been in the room with me now for 40 minutes, you kind of know vaguely who I am, right? I don't like sort of pomposity, all that stuff drives me nuts. I had a Swedish boss who would take his senior team away for 2 days, and we'd do something like Six Sigma, right, which at that point was kind of very fashionable. So you'd go to this really beautiful hotel, fantastic food and wine, you'd do Six Sigma, and at the end of the 2 days, he'd sit there and he'd go, so what do you think of Six Sigma? Well, what are you meant to say? I think it's rubbish. Of course, it's obvious, right? You're going to say, no, Rolf, this is the greatest thing we've ever done. And at one point, he did something where it was obvious that he was discussing something with me, but he wanted me to say what he wanted me to say and agree with him. And I couldn't help myself, actually, so I said, well, I tell you, Rolf, let's cut out the middleman. you tell me what I think and I'll just go away. And he did not like that. So I think, don't call their bluff either sometimes, but it has to be a real dialogue. And if it's not a real dialogue, don't have it. Because if you're just playing the game, just tell us. People would rather be told. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Great question.
So, great hat, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's been,
Sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Will's in charge.
I'll come
I got
down.
that.
it's been enjoyable to hear a little bit about your life. Would you consider yourself a self-made man?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. We were discussing this earlier. I'm certainly somebody who economically has come miles away from where I started. My father was a rural schoolmaster. So I think at the very end of his career, he's unfortunately passed away, but he'd been sort of 90 odd now. So when he retired at 65, in a year, he made what I make in about 3 hours. So to that respect, yes, economically, I'm in a completely different place from where I came. I don't really see myself as a self-made man, because I really am a kind of corporate type. I've never been an entrepreneur. I've never bet the store. We were talking about this earlier. I think I have a couple of friends of mine who built, billion-dollar businesses. One did it with $1,000 and a mop and a bucket, and 25 years later, he's got $1 billion construction business. Those are the people I think are self-made, because they kind of really risked it. I've never really risked it. I've just been very successful at being the person in a corporate hierarchy who is seen to be the person to get promoted up to the next job. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. So when you're talking about your friends that have made it from, they started
Yeah.
their own companies, things like
Yeah.
that, we're talking about economically there, they have, risked all their, their
Yes.
financial
Yes.
success and.
Yeah, and the family have had to live in an apartment, and I find people like that. I have two friends of mine, one who's based in South Carolina who's done that, and another friend of mine based in Houston who's took a $26 million business that his dad ran and turned it into a $1 billion oil and gas services company. I think I'm self-made in the fact that I had no career advice when I was young. I just kind of meandered around, as I said, English literature graduate, it's useless, fun, but useless. And stumbled into my first job and kind of found my dad always would have felt, I think that the more money you earned, then the more dishonest you had to be. Coal miner's son from the Welsh Valleys, his view was kind of capitalism somehow is manipulated. So in that respect, I would say, yeah, I'd be self-made in that way. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Interesting question.
Great question. Let's go over here. Yes, sir.
So, I think if I get this right, Bobby Knight, the infamous coach, said that the will to succeed is important, but the will to prepare is equally as important. So, how do you prepare? And have you ever been in instances where you have not been as prepared as you would have liked to have been?
Yes. Yes to the second one, and it's normally gone badly, actually. There is a vernacular, which is PPP leads to PPP, which is, excuse my language, piss poor planning leads to piss poor performance. Right? So, and when I was a young salesman, the planning that went into a sales call, you cannot imagine. We had engineered the sales process. So when I was taught how to sell, there were 4 ways to use a pen. And you were judged on that when you made your 8 sales calls every day, and you did it in exactly the same sequence. I could take you through the planned sales slip of Pedigree Pet Foods today because of the way they did it into you. So I was engineered to be a salesperson by the best people on earth, in my opinion. So yes, I'm still. It's kind of interesting, I think, as you get further into your career, it looks like you're not prepared because you've done it so many times, but actually, so I always read the document. I don't necessarily let you present the document, so I'm sure I infuriate my folks, some of whom are in this room, you'll have prepared 20 pages, I'll have read it, you walk into the room, I'll ask you about page 6. So, but I always do the preparation. And if people don't do it, one of the abilities I have is, although I kind of operate at the macro, I can also operate at the micro. So if you don't have your ducks in a row, I'll drill. And then that just gets uncomfortable, maybe for both of us, I don't know. And I've had bosses like that. So I had an American boss, actually, who, it's so funny, style is so different, isn't it? So I was running a business in Holland, and this guy who was the international vice president, we needed this huge, what we thought was this massive investment. And in between, the gentleman who we were presenting to left, and the CEO of the entire group turned up, because he was coming to listen to our presentation. We got the whole day, he'd flown over in the corporate jet from Wisconsin, and we're in page 3 of a 60-page presentation, which this guy's predecessor would have demanded. And he said to us, so what you're telling us is your press is sharp, you need a new one. And we said, yeah. He said, okay, done. He said, what else are we going to do for the day? I said, that was it. That was going to be the whole thing. He said, okay, and then he flew back up. So, you have to know the style. Some people want different style. So, but yeah, I would say preparation is all, actually. Especially, I find even to this day, there are times when it's just like an old sales call. It's belting with rain, it's the last call on a Friday, and you've got to get dealing with it. And it might be dealing with a shareholder, it might be dealing with an employee, it might be dealing with an asset choice, and you better be prepared. So not being prepared is kind of, it's not unforgivable, but don't do it twice. That makes sense.
Great question. Yeah. Up here, yes, sir.
So, first question, how do you like the weather better from Montreal? I've also lived in Montreal for a few months, but I was studying. And the second question was, which is more relevant.
Oh, not really.
What is your #1 rule for successful management and reaching goals? Number one rule or something that.
I think you have to be honest, actually. I think honesty is an underestimated, but the great line, if you can, what you need is integrity. When you can fake that, you've made it. I think actually honesty really matters. And old-fashioned words, empathy, I think really matters actually if you're going to run a team of people. Do you really understand what's driving them? And focus. I mean, you've got to be focused, because you can do again, I think, don't misunderstand activity briefing. Just because you're busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're achieving, it just means you're busy. So, doing what matters. I mean, I'm sure, when one's studying, I mean, you just have to kind of, I mean, I remember, I had to write all these essays, forever and ever and ever. Of course, when you read English, you read and you write. That's kind of what you do. And, as you did. And, you had to learn actually how to structure an essay, because essays don't just happen, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, right? You learn a structure. So I think you also need process, so that matters too. I think a long-winded answer to the question.
Other question, yes, sir. Or, I'm sorry, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I know you've been in your industry for decades. And what keeps you
Thank
going
you.
or still motivates you?
Well, it's ever changing, and I have a low attention span, so that helps. We have this ultimate conundrum which fascinates me, which is you have a large, profitable, declining business. What can you do? It's a really tough gig, actually, to be honest, but also a very interesting one. How do you motivate people around an industry that has its challenges in terms of volume and profit over the long haul? How do you generate any shareholder interest in a business where they like the cash flow, but they have no idea how long it's going to last, so they give you a very low valuation, a low multiple of cash flow. That just interests me. And the minute it's not interesting, you're dangerous as a CEO. If you don't find it interesting, or I think you produced this sort of perfect Swiss watch that no one can run it like you can run it. And that's just rubbish. Organizations react like that when they get new leadership. But it's just interesting. And I love the people, I enjoy the culture, I value these, I enjoy seeing these people every morning, actually. We've been together long enough, it's a family, really.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, please, sorry.
Thank you. Well, I'm an executive coach and I live in a framework of vertical development, versus horizontal development, and it's all about emotional intelligence and how we as adults move through all these different stages of development, not just children do that. And it was interesting to me to hear you speak about your management team that has been so stable and so productive and agile and resilient. And, you know, they all come with different stages
Oh, boy,
of
they
their
do.
own development,
They
right?
do, yeah.
And can you speak to how you have managed to have such a productive team that manages change and communicates so well together?
Golly, well, so let's talk about them for a minute, shall we? So we have two French Canadians, one of whom is the CFO, one of whom is the M&A and strategy person, ex-McKinsey, who is also a nuclear physicist, ex-Stanford grad, I mean, just brains coming from every pore. I have a chief administrative officer who was born in Poland, now an American citizen. And I have two general managers of the big divisions, one ex-Procter & Gamble guy who was at Procter for years and years and years, into private equity. We bought the business. He's now running my personal care business. And a Harvard MBA who's running the pulp and paper business, who's ex-army actually, fought in Iraq. So it's pretty, and me, so it's a pretty diverse bunch. I think so you'd have to ask them. So they know all the things I'm really bad at, and they cover my weaknesses brilliantly, actually, and God bless them for it. I mean, they're brilliant at that. They also know that in a fight, I'll stick up for them. So I'd never sacrifice them. So if a board member starts pushing, I always push back and go, no, you know, that's not right. This person does add value, you can't. So if we're sitting in a board meeting and it gets a bit tricky, I'll throw myself between the board member and I think the CEO has a duty to do that. You can't just. So I mean, I'm not singing my own trumpet, but it's partly I think they just know they're valued. I mean, I think it sounds soft and squishy, but people need to know their value at this level because they've got lots of choices. They can go anywhere. I mean, but they do know their value, and they know. And we've been through it all. We've had the births, we've had the deaths, we've had the marriages blow up. I mean, we've had the lot. But we've always kind of stuck with each other, and that's always been important to me, actually. In fact, I've worked for a lot of businesses and run a lot of teams. I'll make the change at the beginning, but so I got rid of the HR person who's hopeless and a few other people, and just change the structure a little bit. When you're with me, you're kind of with me, actually. That makes sense? So I think they know that at some level.
Deep trust.
Well, something. So, for example, we're just doing our annual appraisals, so we're doing, and in the annual appraisal, I always ask, what am I doing that makes you angry? What am I doing? Where am I failing with you? Let's start there, and then we'll talk about how you're failing with me. But, and that, so for example, my chief legal officer, in fact, we just did it today, so it's close to my heart. He's one of these people who can't hold on to a problem. He has to tell me, and then he feels better. So for 10 years I've said to him, for God's sake, don't turn up on my office at 7:30 in the morning and dump the problem on me. I don't do it, you'll get a bad reaction. And this year is the first year that actually he has stopped doing that. And we've got on much better this year than we had previously. Because he comes in, he books the time with me and says, John, I've got a couple of issues I need to talk about. He tells me what they are, and we deal with them. So that's how we interact. Yes.
Great question. We've got time for one more, and I saw a hand right here. Yes, sir. Let's have, yeah.
Yeah. I was curious, and you have been very open about some of the failures, but what has been maybe the biggest accomplishment, like you think about your career, like turnaround that really.
Ooh.
It's a great question.
Well, actually, quite early on. So I was a headhunter for a while, and was really bad at it. I hated it. And I got fired. But during that time, I was asked to look for the managing director of a small company in Europe. And so I thought, well, so I rang up the gentleman who I was recruiting, who I'd known from a previous life, and said, look, can I do that job? I said, let me come and interview for that job, because I no longer have a job. Give us a job. Right? So this was a company called Fort Howard Corporation. It's now owned by Coke Industries, Georgia Pacific. So I went for the interview, and they said, yeah, you can do it. And I was running, not a very big business, maybe $100, $150 million business in Europe, 2 facilities, pan-European sales and marketing. And it was a complete and utter, I have to say something polite, train wreck. Everybody hated each other's guy. It was just awful. And so I, did what you do. First of all, I understood the numbers. That's the first thing to do, right? Where are the levers? I changed the team. I brought some people in. I brought in a new CFO. I brought in a sales and marketing guy I knew. And we absolutely turned that thing around in, probably took us 2 years to really get it humming. And I remember I worked for this lovely man who was the CEO of Fort Howard, who was a kind of steelhead, Wisconsin paper engineer, donned honest as the day is long, still hadn't got air conditioning in his house, drove his Toyota pickup truck, was worth about $60 million. He was just fabulous. I loved him actually. And we used to call him Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was like this little wise. But I told him, I said, he loved it. And he said to me, so the numbers were great. It was just all going swimming. And he said to me, you've done an extraordinary job in this business. I remember where we were driving at the time. I think it's always great to have the boss there. But I said, well, yes, Dom, but these people, they've really stepped up. He said, no, we've done this. So, that was incredibly motivating for me, that he really just said, don't self-deprecate here. Were it not for you, this would not have happened. He was very clear. And he was not the kind of guy who said that sort of stuff. He was very, and so I think that probably when I look back on it, and I also think now, when I joined this business, it had its challenges. And we still have, don't misunderstand me, we still have our challenges. But the feeling, the energy in Domtar is very different. When I came in, it was going to be the best documented business disaster in history. We would have known exactly when it happened, but we wouldn't have done much. It was very sort of passive. Does that make sense? So I think that, but I remember, or going right back to the beginning, I can think of shops that I got thrown out of, but I'd come back the next week and eventually they'd buy my product and, right to the very, I should tell you. Can I have about 2 minutes?
Sure, yeah.
So, so this accent is not just an English accent. It actually has a technical name. It's called received pronunciation, which means somebody taught you how to speak like this. It's not regional. So it comes from, a specific set of private schools, and they teach you how to speak. So, of course, I have an accent miles above my income potential at the age of 21, right? Because I have no idea what I'm going to do. But I'm a graduate of a pretty good university. I become a salesman, and I get South London, Brixton, which is a really rough area of London. And I think I'm really something. I got my Ford Escort, my samples, I'm the guy. And I go to a Tesco store, which is a British retailer, and it's in an old building, and its storage area is like a castle keep, so it has an open staircase around the side of the wall. And in those days, all the stores were profit centers. So, they had, and one way they could make the profit work is if they had any damaged product, salesmen like me would write them a credit note for all the damage, and they'd kind of make it all work, and they make their inventory level out. It's complete crookery, but anyway. So there's store manager, and he never called you by name. So it was never, John, how are you? It's, oi, pet foods. That was me. I was the pet food salesman. He said, I've got some damages. Go downstairs and write me a credit note. So I go down there. And he's got 2 cans. So I go back upstairs and I go, I'm a new salesman. I go, well, according to our sales manual, I can't write you a credit note because you've only got 2 cans. He goes, we'll soon see about that. Down we go into this dark hole. He picks up 48 cans of pet food, throws them against the wall. So there's, broken cans and God knows what all over the wall. And he looks me in the eye and he goes, That enough for you now, sir? So I think you do learn humility, and that's very hard. And actually, Peter Browning, who's a great friend of mine, who obviously knows this institution very well, he started as a salesman. And I do have this slight obsession that those people who really started on the real front line kind of get it in ways that people who've never really been on the front line maybe don't. But that's probably my own, projecting my own experience in the future. But, so that was, yeah, so that, I mean, that and eventually, of course, I built a relationship with this guy. But there have been some, but you learn, I think you learn more from sort of what goes wrong, actually, because if you survive to tell the time, all right.
Great question. So
Oh.
we are out of time. I'm gonna ask you one last question, John,
Sure.
if you, around advice. So you've got a captive audience of MBA students, of undergraduate business students, undergraduate students across all disciplines, alumni, members of the community. What advice would you give us?
Oh,